Travis Wayne Goodsell. So while trying to process the Mormons Stop Hating and Love video, the Mormon YouTube employee started his shift and chose to restart the processing all over again. It's unbelievable. Mormons refuse to love. They would rather betray their brother because he knows more or is favored of the Mormon God more than they, because they refuse to study what the learning of the Jews concerning the Mormon Christ is. There are other religious channels on YouTube, and not only are there ex-Mormons who do videos that keep recycling the September 6 reveals, as well as Gerald and Sandra Tanner's information that are mostly contained in their big book, Mormonism, Shadow or Reality. And even Gerald and Sandra Tanner, they publish the documents exposing the church as not being Christian. That's their whole point and purpose, is to convince Mormons they're not Christian. And yeah, okay, not Christian, got it, good. So why are you still putting pressure on us? Oh, Mormons, other Mormons believe we're Christian, and they go around demanding that everybody accept them as Christian. Got it. And so the unfortunate thing about Mormonism, Shadow or Reality is that they'll show the documents, but then they'll have annotations all over it about how the church isn't Christian, as they left the Mormon church and started their own Christian church. Another one, the one true Christian church, Utah Lighthouse Ministries. And that concept is slightly different in Christianity than it is for Mormonism, but not quite. So then, won't get into a Christian discussion. But there's a YouTube guy who is solely dedicated to pointing out how Mormonism does not conform and comply to his interpretation of the Bible. And so he'll, rant and rail against Mormonism because of his interpretations of the Bible. And he's wrong in doing that. And he is, I think, popular, but he's not correct. You can't use another belief system to claim that another belief system is false. That's a fallacy argument. You have to go to the premises of a person's argument and go, no. And so, for example, the church claims Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God. No, he didn't. And ex-Mormons will say, well, he wrote it. He's the author of the Book of Mormon. No, that premise is incorrect. And Joseph had nothing to do with the composition in the Book of Mormon. Sidney Rigdon's the major author of the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith Sr. had to rewrite the 116 pages after Jr. gave them up to Martin Harris. The evil man, the wicked man. And so, very frustrating trying to communicate with people who are brand new to my channel having to redo everything for you guys. And those who have been around for about a month or about a year. So, well, yeah. So let's go back to 39, and this is First Nephi, Second Nephi, in the terms of Joseph, because in Second Nephi chapter 3, Joseph makes an appearance in the Book of Mormon with an added prophecy that we don't have in our scriptures. It's part of the plain and precious truths that are missing and are restored in the Book of Mormon. The writing of Joseph to be merged with the Bible as a quad to fulfill Ezekiel 37, having nothing to do with the Egyptian documents of which the Bible should be translated correctly. When you have an incorrect belief system, you make all sorts of errors. And so just look at all the errors that come from Mormons who believe Jesus Christ is our Christ. They go on wild rabbit holes. Oh, yeah, he was born in 6 April 1 AD. No. And it's defied science, the signs that occurred, because astronomy can't find them, and so it must be something supernatural. No. What are you doing? Where are you going? Get back on the straight and narrow path that leads to the tree of life. Quit going down the midst of darkness. You're gonna drown in the filthy waters. Or have a good time at the great and spacious building. Partying and drinking. And orgies. 2.5 men. Oh dear God, they define the numbers for... Okay. I'm waiting to find out where I hadn't seen before, and maybe I had, when I got the collection, I did watch where I thought I might have left off, and I just don't remember that I had seen them. I was trying to find out when Charlie Sheen had to be removed from the show, and Ashton Kutcher came in, but I'm in season 8, which I guess was 2011, and I'm still recognizing the episodes. So it was the shortest season of the seasons, so I don't know how much longer I have. What happened in 2011? I was locked up in Utah's Nazi concentration camp, so I sort of missed out on a lot of stuff. But anyway, again, this is where Joseph gets locked up wrongfully for a false accusation due to Judas and his evil. These are the consequences of being evil. You know, it's not just an immediate response, but it's also rippling ramifications of consequences when you do something wrong and when you do something good. That's why people tried to do the pay it forward thing from the movie, and it fizzled out and died. But people tried. When it was no longer popular to have your 15 minutes of fame, it died. I never did see the show. I just, no, I am not watching that. I've already read it in the scriptures. You know, if you give a gift grudgingly, it's like you retain the gift in the first place. That passage. So, Joseph is sold into Egypt, and Potiphar now takes over. Remember, these are a completely separate story, and it comes from an Egyptian document, actually. Not the two brothers, is it? Tale of Two Brothers? Or the Tale of Sinewy. That's it. Tale of Sinewy is where this portion of the Bible comes from, is the Tale of Sinewy. Because there's a lot of parallels. And so thus, to restore it, according to Ezekiel 37, you need to refer to the Tale of Sinewy to correct this part of the text. And so, unless you want to acknowledge that the author is claiming this, but you miss out on a lot of information by disregarding the Tale of Sinewy, from which this was supposed to have come from. But there were some authors' editings, author's discretion, shall we say, sort of like Da Vinci Code. Dan Brown originally wrote the book, and then little Richie Cunningham took over directing and did some changing from the book, so that it was not literal from the book. And so there was some extra stuff that Richie Cunningham preferred to have in it. And it was a great movie still, but nonetheless, not the same as the book. And you get people arguing about ridiculous stuff about how the movie is not like the book, and how they're upset that it wasn't like the book. I mean, yeah, well, it would be nice to have something that's true to a book if they're going to claim the thing, but otherwise it's still good. I mean, you have, for example, The Time Machine, H.G. Wells. He has the original movie from 1960, and then there's the other one in the 80s or 90s or 2000s, whenever it was, that it has a lot of differences. But the second one has some stuff that is more like the book than the 1960 version. And so that was interesting to see how they both pulled from the book to make their version of the movie. And so, yeah, this is what this author is doing for the story of Joseph being locked up in jail, which is a type and shadow of the last days Christ. Because you see all of these heroes getting locked up. Samson, Jesus, Abinadi. Not a coincidence. That's what's known as a recognizable pattern for prophecy, as apocalyptic literature. And so here you have Joseph being sold to Potiphar as a slave. He's the captain of the guard, apparently. Far. It's supposed to be an Egyptian word, but obviously turned into a Hebrew, not transliteration, because there's some errors in the transfer. Because Joseph gets an Egyptian name, and it's close, but there's some problems with his name tying it to the Egyptian equivalent. But nonetheless, the author tried. But that's not the point of the story. It's not a literal history. You won't be able to find Joseph in the historical documents. You'll find people who have a lot of similar characteristics, like Tuya and Yuya, but they're not Joseph, or the guy in the couple is not Joseph. And so you can't mix literal history with this. tale of sinewy for this portion of Joseph. That's it. Don't go beyond it. All right. So, and so, bought him from the hands of the Ishmaelites, from his own kin, who were the great and abominable church, because Isaac usurped the birthright blessing from Ishmael. And so the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian, Potiphar. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. Similar to Ammon, when he goes to be a slave for the Lamanites, he gets the worst job, taking care of the flocks, where the other Lamanites come to scatter the flocks so that the servants would be murdered for their neglect of the flock. They thought that was funny to have their brethren murdered. But nonetheless, so Joseph was raised to an overseer over the house of Potiphar. And to get an idea of what that role is, I refer you to the Planet of the Apes, the one that nobody liked except me. It was, what was her name? I should know her name. She was in Sports Illustrated for their February issue as a teenager. Cast. Yeah, there she is, Estella Warren. You also might recognize her from Kangaroo Jack and some other B-name movies that came straight to DVD. She is a great actress. She just couldn't get the big breaks because the Planet of the Apes sort of ruined it for her, I guess. And I don't know why. I loved it. And it even set it up for a sequel, and I wanted to see the sequel. Nope. The rest of you didn't like it. So anyway, but yeah, there's an overseer of the humans that is a human, and the one that serves the dinner to the apes and stuff like that. It's even in the original with Charlton Heston too. Okay, so goodly person, goodly parents. Oh, that's in the Book of Mormon. Interesting. It came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes, wandering eyes, upon Joseph. And she said, "Lie with me, go on and lay with me. Tell me you love me, say I'm the only one." Beautiful song by Depeche Mode. But he refused, and said to his master's wife, "Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand." The laws of Hammurabi need to be brought up here, even though that was way before this was ever written. But in order to protect women from rape, he designed a set of laws to assist women. And so if a woman is without the walls of a city all by herself, she has no legal recourse. And so you need to be with other women when you're outside of the walls of the city. And there are stories about women who are all by themselves. Jesus and the woman at the well. What's she doing there all by herself? And she's had 8 husbands. I guess she just doesn't care anymore. But if you're within the walls of the city and you're all alone, you can claim that you were raped, and the guy gets in trouble. That's what you're seeing here, is that law being taken into effect. They're in the walls of the city that they're in, even though this is a made-up story. And because she made the complaint, she has to be believed. And so Joseph gets in trouble. So it kind of sucks if you come across a lone woman within the walls of a city as you're a male. She owns you now. And so that's not a good situation, as there are negative consequences for evil designing people. But that's what happened here, is that it's not a real story, but we're being told of this particular law that got Joseph in trouble. And so it's a back and forth discussion about how he wants to serve out his time, even though he's imprisoned wrongfully and sold into slavery and blah blah blah. And she caught him by his magic underwear, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his garment in her hand. Did she catch him by his garment, or did she rip it off? And fled and got him out. And so, nope, too late. He was alone with a woman within the walls of the city. So he's in trouble if she chose to file a complaint, and she did. And so she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, See, he hath brought in a Hebrew. And it's not bad enough that he was male, all alone with her. She goes and gets racist, or bigoted, depending on whether it's the culture or the religion. Unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. See, there it is. That's all you have to claim, is that you were within the walls of the city and you cried out, and you win your case. And the other guy gets punished. But if you're without, it doesn't matter. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got out. One of those little ways around the law. I can't remember what the word is for that. But knowing that he's going to be criminally liable, you're not going to leave your garment behind. You're going to make sure you take all the evidence with you. But nonetheless, and she laid his garment by her until the Lord came home. And so she repeats it. And when the master heard the words of his wife, which he spake unto him, saying, After this manner did my servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. Yeah, well, you want to believe your wife. You don't want to believe she's a whore. But nonetheless, he also had recognized Joseph for who he was by his fruits. But he was cast into prison, where the king's prisoners were bound. So that's kind of interesting that the author knew of this difference. And he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph during his stay in the Utah Nazi concentration camp. or Carthage jail, depending on which Mormon you're referring to, who was betrayed by Judah, Utah, and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Not me. The keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. So again, Joseph is demonstrating leadership qualities. And the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him. And the Lord made him to prosper. Really? Prosper? In bondage? I don't think so. I think that's kind of the wrong translation. So, 40. Now, we have a different story from the Egyptian documents. This has to do with the dream stela of the Egyptians. David Moses the Fourth, the very same who went into Israel to push back the Hittites at Armageddon, and in the midst of the war took a little vacation to the mountain of Jerusalem, where there's other scriptures that talk about an instance that happened there during that time. And sure enough, she and her husband happened to be Hittites. Huh. Interesting. I wonder, tried to be sly, or slick. But yeah, David and Bathsheba with Uriah, who was not the captain of the guard, but a military captain. And so yeah, the dream stela, which talks about the Sphinx, that are guards of the pyramids of Giza, and it's found in that area. And so, yeah, tale of Sinai, and now the dream stela of David Moses the Fourth. And I dreamed a dream, I dreamed a dream, la 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 la. I can't remember. It's right there on the tip of my mind. I just can't get it out. Almost came close. Anyway, there's the butler and the baker that are locked up with him. They were employees of Pharaoh, which they correctly call a king of Egypt, per se, because there was during the 18th dynasty when Pharaoh was starting to be used for both the king and the high priest, whereas before it was referred to as king rather than Pharaoh. But you can see in the Roman period both are being utilized. So yeah, it was that same 18th dynasty when that shifting of meanings changed. And so they were sad. If by chance you meet a friend, do not let it stay. Quickly force them to turn it upside down and fake a smile today. And you don't force people's agency. You mourn with those who mourn. But anyway, he asked them, "What's up?" And they said, "We had a dream. And there is no interpreter." Oh, Joseph is a dream interpreter, because as a teenager, he was having prophecy dreams. That also is prophecy for your checklist for the last days Mormon Christ. That as a teenager, he had prophecy dreams. And could interpret them and write a book about how to interpret Mormon prophecy dreams. Okay, they're putting up carbon monoxide testers. We do not have any fuel burning systems, so they're probably going to knock on my door to put one in my apartment. They were supposed to just do tests, but apparently they're putting in alarms. Dear God. So, yeah, be ready for me to abruptly stop the video. So, the first person is the butler. Tells his dream. He says, a vine was before me, and the vine were 3 branches. In the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And so Joseph said 3 branches are 3 days. Yeah, I told you my dream back in early 2017, I think it was in February, because 3 months. I had 3 suitcases I was packing for a mission. In 3 months, sure enough, I began the mission that I've been telling you about lately. That I'm wondering if it's finished or not, and now my internet speed is back up again, and I can do these long videos again. So I'm confused. But yeah, there's common dream interpretations, but it is conditional upon a person's upbringing and experience. However, a shared culture can yield similar interpretations. But in our world today, it's a little more complicated, but you just have to have an understanding of their experiences, their upbringing, their religion, etc., to figure out the interpretation. Because most interpretation books out there consider Christianity evil. And so you're going to see religious stuff as an evil omen dream in interpretation, whereas the actual Christians themselves would go, "What? No! That can't be true!" So yeah, you got to be careful of that when you're choosing a dream interpretation book. I would recommend one that I used in high school, but you'd have to still, it's similar to the Apocrypha. It's mostly translated correctly, but there are interpolations of man. And if you can identify the interpolations, it's similar to Greek. You can see Scott and Liddell's Greek-English lexicon that mostly translated correctly, but there are interpolations of the Catholic Church imposed into it. If you can get rid of those, you'll do just fine. And 3 days, yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head and restore thee unto thy place. So yeah, that's a pretty easy dream to interpret. A branch buds, blossoms, and clusters of grapes. That's pretty favorable. Not difficult to interpret. But nonetheless, it's supposedly Joseph's gift. See, I've helped people with their interpretations by getting to specifics as to whether they use their left hand or their right hand, and if they themselves are left-handed or right-handed. Also makes a difference in interpretation. But nonetheless, I digress. And so the next guy, the baker, thinking, oh, his dream was favorable, so must mine. And then, let's see, let the head deliver the former manner was a butler. But think on me and show kindness, and he didn't. He went back to work, just as Joseph Smith prophesied, or Joseph prophesied from Joel for the latter days, and forgot all about Joseph until we get to the next chapter. So when the chief baker in 16 saw that the interpretation was good, oh, then mine must be good, even though birds are plucking at the bread. An obvious bad omen, but nonetheless. Now, he made a whole bunch of baked meats for Pharaoh, and birds did eat them. Did you not see birds? Is it Stephen King's birds? Or was it Alfred Hitchcock's birds? Who did the birds? Bird is the word. Maybe they both did birds, and the other one was, or was it Edgar Allan Poe? Because the Simpsons did an Edgar Allan Poe homage with a bird. Birds. Alfred Hitchcock, yeah. Alfred Hitchcock was brilliant. And it was awesome that he did cameos. Subtle cameos. Sort of like Stan Lee in his, in the Marvel movies that he was responsible for. We're going to miss him. And so, yeah, on the third day, which is Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast unto all his servants, lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker's servants, and restored the chief butler and the butlership again. And he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand, and he hanged the chief baker. Yeah, but the butler forgot Joseph. Alrighty. And so this now segues into the dream stela of Pharaoh David Moses IV, Tahut Moseh, phonetically the same. So it's transliterated into Paleo-Hebrew as David Moses. So 41, and okay, so this is it, isn't it? Yep, this is it. And 2 full years. That's it? I was locked up for 6. Dear God, you had it easy. And Abinadi, that was only like weeks. Everybody's having fun with me. Even Joseph Smith. You know, he kept going back because the Danite brethren betrayed him and caused the crimes that Joseph got busted for. But still, I mean, maybe altogether it could be a total of 6 years. Maybe. We'd have to get the calculator out. Go to the Wikipedia page. Joseph Smith and the criminal justice system. That Pharaoh dreamed. Oh, right there. Can't figure it out. It's a female who sings it. And behold, he stood by the river. So Pharaoh's dream. He stood by the river and beheld out of the river came 7 well-favored kine, cattle, and fat-fleshed. And they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. So already you should know the interpretation without having to read the rest of the story. 7 refers to 7 years, healthy, prosperous harvest time. And then 7 years of famine. Simple, easy. 7 is also a Babylonian trigger word for bad luck. And so sure enough, the second 7 is the bad luck. So this is a warning dream from a Babylonian influence of the author of the text on the David Moses Stela. And you'll find people who try to claim that Joseph existed for real in a certain time period because of a famine that occurred in Egypt. Or they'll try to compare it to Moses' famine with the plagues of Egypt. No, do not try to harmonize with literal history. It's like Noah's Ark. We found it. See, even with Christians, after Constantine designated Jesus Christ as real, all sorts of Christians were claiming little wood chips were part of the cross of Christ and were selling them for $19.95. But wait, that's not all. If you call with the next few minutes, we'll throw in a vial of blood of Jesus. Wait a minute, I thought he wasn't human. What's he doing with blood? Yeah, whole sorts of scams in religion as a result of what Constantine did. Everybody wanted to profit off of it. And so then the next dream he had, same interpretation. 7 7 ears of corn upon one stalk, rank and good. And then 7 thin ears, blasted with the east wind, sprang up after them. So again, it's a repetitive dream trying to get across to Pharaoh, hey, you've got to store up for the coming famine of 7 years, or the coming drought. And I should give a warning. I shouldn't have to. I've already done it, but I most likely have a brand new audience who doesn't know that I've given the warning already for this year. The news for Utah, as well as the nation, has already reported that the snows that we've been getting are insufficient to pull us out of the drought from last year, which was the worst on record for, is it 1,200 years, 1,600 years? A long time. And it's going to be worse because of the minimal snow we received this winter. I repeat, it's going to be worse of a drought and fire conditions this year. If there is no fulfillment of an exodus, as the signs in the heavens are frustrating me as to when are you going to stop all this repetitious signs in the heavens and actually get to the fulfillment of the things on earth. Joseph Smith translation, Revelation 12, verse 1. If you've been following me since last year, we're in the middle of a tetrad. Don't make me wait until after the third solar eclipse, as in 2015. My life is in jeopardy. And so, Pharaoh is troubled. Nobody can interpret it. And they use magicians here, which probably is magi. It's not necessary to get into it, but it's also a Babylonian thing. Pharaoh would have had priests, as Pharaoh is supposed to be the high priest with the third eye snake on his forehead, as he's supposed to be a seer. But nonetheless, let's see. And then, yeah, the chief butler says, "Pharaoh, wait, I know somebody from jail." Alright, so, yeah, it's hidden behind the TV. If I can... battery powered. So that's going to be a pleasure and a joy. And there is no fuel burning. So let's see. Where were we? They keep repeating Hebrew, which, Son of God. But even with Moses and Abraham, they keep repeating Hebrew. And so don't fall for the trap by certain scholars who say it's the Apiru, who were mercenaries during the Hyksos period. Or the Scorpion King, which they placed him in the wrong part of the world. I mean, it was an awesome movie. It was Egyptian based, but at least get your ancient deities and locations correct. Dear God. It's like you were just doing it to make money. Some director liberties. Let's see. Pharaoh called Joseph hastily out of the dungeon, out of the Nazi concentration camp of Utah, and he shaved himself. The reason why Egyptians were bald is the same reason British went bald and did the shaving and the wigs. Is lice. Problem with lice. And so not having the stuff we have these days, and hygiene, better hygiene, cleansing and cleaning, it's always a problem. It's never fun when kids bring lice home from school. But I remember they did school testing for lice. Have some strange woman rub a comb through my hair. But it's always nice to have somebody rub combs through my hair. As you can tell, I have thick hair, even though I've got my grandfather's bald spot now. But, so awesome having a comb rubbed through my hair. Let's see, change his raiment. Yeah, well. Memories on the corner of my mind. And so he tells Joseph the dream and says, "You dummy, it was easy. Why can't anybody else figure it out?" And so, yeah, he tells him, "You're going to have 7 years of plenty, and then 7 years of famine." And so then Pharaoh's concerned, "Oh no, what do I do? Well, the Mormons have this welfare square with a granary bin, and it's just a token to make them look good. They don't actually use it to actually take care of the poor, as the video I did last night, which that Mormon chose to threaten me with. The church themselves. I did the photo thing from their church news. Only one truck for the food bank in New York City. So yes, it was an easy and obvious song in the description below. AC/DC, I feel safe in New York City. Safe in a cage. Another great lost in the history books. Alright, so yeah, double on the Pharaoh twice. Look out, a man discreet and wise. Yeah, and you're the one who interpreted the dream, and now you're telling him what to do, and you're saying, look for some guy who can do that. I mean, can you imagine me doing that to you guys rather than coming out with the identity of the Mormon Last Days Christ? Being all discreet about it, subtle, using the symbol or the prophecies rather than the actual identification, and justifying it with Alma in 32, saying that if you give them, the Mormons, the answer, then they're at a higher level of responsibility because now they're compelled to believe, and they no longer get to exercise faith and other than to accept or deny the facts. And Mormons are more tending towards denying the facts. And so that would put them in a worse standing. But Mormons aren't willing to use faith to figure out the truth, and thus many Mormons have faith crises. But nonetheless, I still find it weird. I cannot scientifically explain it, because there's no way for the last days Mormon Messiah to set it all up. He can't choose the name of his parents. He can't choose his own name. He can't choose his birthplace, his conception, his birth time. He can't dictate where he moves as a kid with his parents. And all those prophecies are in Scripture. And it just blows my mind. But, there has to be a time where he then realizes, hey, it must be me. I'm the only one fulfilling all these prophecies of which I had no control over. I mean, even Moses in the book of Jasher, as a baby, a kid, who puts hot burning coal in his mouth. How in the world can that be rigged to be a self-fulfilling prophecy? Brian David Mitchell claimed to be the Mormon Christ, and he purposely changed his name to be self-fulfilling. And he failed miserably. He didn't know his scriptures. And so, yeah, Chad Daybell. Oh, he had a near-death experience. He must be the Messiah. We need to murder my kids because they're zombies. Dear God, stupidity of some people who just don't get it. You can't call yourself to be somebody without being appointed. And it's weird. I cannot explain it. But, yeah, once the guy knows, he is now under responsibility to make sure to fulfill prophecy for what he's supposed to do. And it's in there, and it's not magic and witchcraft and supernatural strength and ability. He doesn't go snap his finger and all existence of wickedness is gone. You guys have been watching too many Marvel movies. with Stan Lee doing cameos. But yeah, Constantine really did a number on us. Dear God. But anyway, and so yeah, discreet and wise, set him over the land of Egypt, let him appoint officers over the land, and take the fifth part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And so yeah, Nelson should have used that, but instead he used the parable of talents to justify tithing and all other sources of income, which was a confession of tax fraud. This is what tithing is supposed to be used for, but here they're only talking about a fifth. But regardless of whether it's a tenth or a fifth, you're setting aside the excess amount to save up for the 7 years of famine. And it's interesting that it's a fifth part rather than a seventh part. So that's 7 years, you have a seventh, so that at the end, well, that one, how did they work this? It'd be 49, and so you'd have to do, no, fish and some loaves, I guess. Those actually are signs in the heavens. The 2 fish, that's Pisces, guys. But that's New Testament stuff. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and food in the cities, the store cities. Just like during Moses' time, they're building the store cities of Ramses and Pithom, and everybody goes, oh, it's during the Set dynasty of the 19th dynasty. No. 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 You're mixing literal history and trying to impose it on the Bible, forcing history to change to conform with the Bible. Don't do that. And so, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, God hath shewed me all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house. Oh, he got Pharaoh to make the decision on his own. Now, I've seen those TV shows where the women do that for the guy. We'll make it think like he's the one who came up with the idea. And so, according to thy word shall my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater. And the cultural thing here is that Joseph now, his children will be in line to marry future pharaohs as part of the harem. And that's why people think Tuya and Nuya are Joseph and his wife. But nonetheless. And so Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. He's the second in command of all Egypt now, the vizier of viziers. Arrayed him in vestitures of fine linen, put a gold chain bling around his neck, and made him to ride in the second chariot, which he had. And so, yeah, he's the commander-in-chief over the chariots. So he's now a war general. He's the guy that goes out to the Battle of Armageddon, where King David Moses IV rode out in a chariot. And it's Joseph that's in command of the chariots. And without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And there's Zaphnath Pa'aniah. funny way. That's a arrow. You just have to learn the vowels and Stargate. And gave to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, and so instead of Potiphar, it's Potipharah, priest of On. That's Heliopolis. In Paleo-Hebrew, it's Heliopolis. The universal symbol of the sun is the O, and the N is the suffix determinative, even though it's a two-letter word combination, but the same thing as it works here. The sun is a prefix determinative, the N is a suffix determinative. When you combine them together, it's just a two-letter word. And so as the N is for the designation of a place, it's the kingdom. And so the kingdom of the sun, Heliopolis. That's the Greek for the city of the sun, Heliopolis. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. There's a reason why they had it as Heliopolis, for the daughter of the priest of Heliopolis. That's Osiris territory. The founding Christ, who was chopped up into 14 pieces of bread and given 2 fishes, 5 loaves. Broken body of the Christ is not Jesus, Osiris, from the original Eden, which is On, Heliopolis. And so when Joseph Smith says that the United States of America was the original Eden, no, he's talking about the last days Eden. Because Old Jerusalem, New Jerusalem in America. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old. Now, if that's not gematria coding, I don't know what else is. Because gematria came with the Jewish mysticism of 600 CE, and the Jews altered the Bible from 800 to 1000 CE. So there was 200 years of Jewish mysticism passing around, and so yes, you will find Jewish mysticism along with Babylonian and Roman and Greek overlapping the original Egyptian, just so that you understand. And Zoroastrian, though it's more in the gospel narratives, the good versus evil thing. That's not the way it was in Egyptian, but people impose devolved religion onto the Egyptians, and it frustrates me to no end. Egyptian came first, not Mesopotamian, not Zoroastrianism, not Chinese, not Hinduism or Buddhism. Egyptian is first. Everything else came from Egypt. And they need to go back to Egypt to relearn before they can unlearn. It is causing too many problems in the world. Okay, so Asenath bore Joseph 2 sons. Manasseh is the firstborn birthright blessing son, but it's usurped by the second son, Ephraim. Isn't that great? And so even though Lehi comes from Manasseh, he's not from Ephraim. And so as much as everybody says the Book of Mormon is the fulfillment of Ezekiel 37, wrong. And Joseph, yes, but not through Ephraim. And be fruitful in the land. Unless you're talking about the descendants of Nephi marrying into Ishmael's family, with the daughters being from Ephraim. but Joseph is not. So the gold plates are not. And 7 years of plenty, and 7 years of dearth, and people were able to buy the grain from Egypt, and they came from all around knowing that they had the storehouses built with the grain to buy. Ta-da! And thus sets up for next week's lesson, not this Sunday's lesson, about Jacob and his sons are doing a reality TV show where it would be Jerry Springer's show. You sold him into Egypt and tricked your dad into thinking he was dead. Here he is, Joseph, your brother.